The moment you start hesitating about something, you already know what's going to happen, you won't do it. We've all been there. You're sitting on the couch thinking about how you should go to the gym, or you're at your desk staring at your to-do list, knowing you need to tackle that one important task. But you hesitate, you wait, and just like that, the moment passes. You've let your mind take control, and now you're not going to the gym, you're not getting the task done, and you're not moving forward. Here's the thing, our brains are wired to protect us from discomfort, from anything that feels like a threat or challenge. And the second you start thinking about doing something difficult, whether it's making a phone call you've been avoiding, speaking up at a meeting, or even just getting out of bed early, your brain hits the brakes. It throws up a red flag and says, hold on, let's think about this. Maybe later. That hesitation, that split second of doubt, is the difference between staying stuck and making progress. It's the barrier that stands between where you are and where you want to be. And this is where the 5-second rule comes in. The 5-second rule is simple but incredibly powerful. Here's how it works the moment you feel yourself hesitate when you know what you should be doing, but aren't doing it. You start counting backward from 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then you move. That's it. No overthinking, no waiting for the perfect moment, no excuses. You act before your brain has a chance to talk you out of it. Why does this work? Because counting down from 5 interrupts your brain's natural habit loops. It breaks the pattern of procrastination and overthinking that keeps you stuck. Normally, when you hesitate, your brain starts looking for ways to keep you safe and comfortable. It says, let's not do this right now, let's do it later when we feel more motivated, and then later never comes. By counting down, you're creating a small window of time where you can override that automatic response. You're giving yourself the opportunity to take control before your brain takes over. Now, you might be thinking, that sounds too simple. How can something like counting down from 5 make a difference? Well, think about how often you let small moments of hesitation stop you from doing things that could change your life. You see an opportunity to speak up at work, but you don't. You want to start a conversation with someone new, but you hesitate, and the moment passes. You have a great idea for a project, but instead of acting on it, you wait, thinking you'll feel more ready later. But the truth is, you're never going to feel ready. Waiting for the right time, the perfect conditions, or enough confidence is just your mind's way of keeping you in your comfort zone. The 5-second rule is about disrupting that pattern. It forces you to take action when you know you should but don't feel like it. And the more you use it, the more you'll see that action leads to motivation, not the other way around. You don't wait to feel motivated before you act, and then the motivation follows. The best part? The 5-second rule works in any situation where you need to push yourself. It's not just for getting out of bed early or going to the gym, although it's great for those things too. It can help you make decisions faster, start conversations with confidence, take risks, and even change your habits. Imagine you're sitting in a meeting and you have an idea. But before you can raise your hand, your brain starts whispering, what if it's a bad idea? What if everyone thinks it's stupid? Maybe I should just stay quiet. That's hesitation. If you let it go on, you won't speak up. But if you use the 5-second rule, you can interrupt that doubt. You count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and raise your hand before your brain has a chance to stop you. The same goes for anything that requires courage. Whether it's asking for a promotion, starting a new business, or even just getting through a tough workout, the moment you feel resistance, count down from 5 and act. It's like a mental push that propels you forward when your mind wants to hold you back. What's important to understand is that the 5-second rule isn't about tricking yourself into doing things you don't want to do. It's about aligning your actions with what you know is best for you. You already know what you should be doing to move your life forward. The problem is that hesitation, fear, and doubt get in the way. The 5-second rule is your tool to break through those mental barriers. And here's the magic of it. Once you start using the rule regularly, you'll notice a shift in how you approach challenges. You'll become more confident because you're no longer waiting for the right moment or perfect conditions. You're taking action, and that builds momentum. You're rewiring your brain to associate discomfort with growth instead of fear. And over time, you'll realize that the things you once hesitated over, the phone calls, the workouts, the risks, are now just things you do automatically. The 5-second rule isn't about making huge, dramatic changes overnight. It's about taking small, decisive actions in those moments that matter. And those small actions add up. Before you know it, you've made more progress than you thought possible, just by learning to take control of your mind in 5 seconds. That voice inside your head, the one that tells you you're not good enough, you're going to fail, or why even bother trying. It's relentless. We all have it. It's that negative self-talk that creeps in when you're about to try something new or challenging. It's that inner critic that constantly chips away at your confidence, holding you back from reaching your full potential. And the most frustrating part, it feels like you can't control it. But here's the truth: you can. Negative self-talk is a habit. It's a pattern of thinking that you've repeated so many times it feels automatic. And like any habit, it can be broken. But to do that, you have to become aware of it, and most importantly, you have to interrupt it. You can't just sit back and let that voice run the show. If you don't stop it, it will keep feeding you the same lies, and eventually you'll start to believe them. Think about how often you've let negative self-talk stop you in your tracks. Maybe you had an idea for a new project at work, but as soon as you thought about sharing it, that voice kicked in: what if it's a bad idea? What if people think I'm stupid? So you stayed quiet. Or maybe you wanted to start a new fitness routine, but your inner critic immediately said, "You've tried this before and failed. What's the point?" So you didn't even bother starting. Negative self-talk isn't just annoying, it's destructive. It's the reason so many people stay stuck in situations they're unhappy with. It's why we procrastinate, why we avoid risks, why we settle for less than we're capable of. But here's the thing: you don't have to listen to that voice. You can choose to interrupt it. The first step to interrupting negative self-talk is recognizing it. Most of us don't even realize how often we're engaging in it. It's become so ingrained in our daily thinking that it runs on autopilot. But the moment you start paying attention to your thoughts, you'll be shocked at how often you're putting yourself down or doubting your abilities. It might sound like, "I'm never going to be good at this," or "I always mess things up." These thoughts can pop up when you're trying something as simple as learning a new skill, or even just getting through a tough day at work. So how do you recognize it? Start by tuning into your emotional state. If you feel yourself getting anxious, frustrated, or discouraged, that's a clue. Ask yourself, what am I thinking right now? You'll likely find that your mind is feeding you some kind of negative story about yourself. And once you've recognized it, you can do something about it. The next step is to interrupt the thought. Don't let it take root. The longer you allow a negative thought to linger, the more power it gains. But if you stop it in its tracks, you can take away its momentum. One simple way to do this is by literally saying, "Stop." You can do this out loud if you're alone, or just say it in your mind if you're in public. It might feel silly at first, but it's incredibly effective. You're giving your brain a command to halt that line of thinking before it spirals out of control. Once you've interrupted the thought, it's time to replace it with something more empowering. Now, I'm not talking about trying to trick yourself with fake positivity. You don't need to go from thinking, "I'm terrible at this," to "I'm the best at this." That's not going to work because it's not believable. Instead, aim for thoughts that are realistic but constructive. For example, if you catch yourself thinking, "I'm never going to get this right," replace it with, "I'm learning and I'll get better with practice." Or if you think, "I always fail," replace it with, "I've had setbacks before, but I've also had successes." The goal is to shift your thinking from criticism to encouragement. You're not pretending everything is perfect, you're simply choosing to focus on what's helpful rather than what's harmful. And over time, these small shifts in thinking start to add up. The more you practice interrupting negative self-talk and replacing it with constructive thoughts, the more your brain starts to adopt that as its new pattern. Now, let's talk about why this works. Our brains are incredibly adaptable. They're constantly forming new connections based on what we repeatedly think and do. So if you've spent years engaging in negative self-talk, your brain has wired itself to default to that pattern. It's like a well-worn path in a forest. The more you walk that path, the clearer and easier it becomes to follow. But when you start interrupting those thoughts and choosing new ones, you're forging a new path. At first, it feels difficult and unfamiliar, but the more you do it, the easier it becomes. Eventually, the old path, the negative self-talk, starts to grow over, and the new path, constructive thinking, becomes your brain's new default. But here's the key: this isn't a one-time fix. Interrupting negative self-talk is a practice. You have to do it consistently. Some days will be harder than others. There will be times when that negative voice is louder and more persistent, especially when you're facing a big challenge or stepping out of your comfort zone. But the more you commit to this practice, the more control you'll have over your mind. And the benefits go far beyond just feeling better. When you stop letting negative self-talk run your life, you'll start to see changes in how you approach everything. You'll be more willing to take risks because you're no longer held back by fear of failure. You'll be more resilient because you're not constantly tearing yourself down when things don't go perfectly. And most importantly, you'll start to believe in your own potential. Because here's the truth: you're capable of far more than that negative voice in your head would have you believe. But to tap into that potential, you have to stop letting that voice control you. You have to take charge of your thoughts. And it all starts with the decision to interrupt that negative self-talk, one thought at a time.